And you married Kerry, and you had your own life.
Yeah.
And then you got your divorce, and so you back more with the family, I guess, than anything. But now you have Birdman, and all I'm saying is, it's gotta be tough on you.
Sometimes.
When people think of the Braxton family, the first thing that comes to mind is music, the harmony, the talent, the voices that shaped an era. But if you pull back the curtain and look closer, you realize talent wasn't the only thing running through that household. Behind the stage lights, behind the Grammys, behind the sold-out tours and chart-topping singles was something much darker. Money, or more specifically, the lack of it. And no one carried that burden more heavily than Toni Braxton. The world knew her as the sultry powerhouse who gave us Unbreak My Heart, a voice that stopped time, a woman who sold over 70 million records and built a legacy that most singers could only dream about. But what the public didn't know, or didn't want to know, was that behind the glamour, Toni was quietly crumbling under financial pressure that would have destroyed anyone else. And standing on the sidelines, watching it all unfold, was her baby sister Tamar Braxton. To this day, Tamar insists people have no idea what her big sister gave up, how much she sacrificed, and how much she suffered just to keep the family afloat. This wasn't just about one woman versus the industry. This was about an entire family that leaned so hard on one person until her back nearly snapped in half. Because when the bills came due, when their mother's car insurance had to be paid, when the fridge had to be stocked, who did they look to? Toni. And when even she couldn't handle the crushing weight anymore, the one sibling who stepped in was Tamar. Not Tawanda, not Trina, not Tracy. Just Tamar. Think about that dynamic for a second. A Grammy-winning superstar, the face of an era, scraping to pull together enough money to pay family bills, while also carrying the cost of an entire career that should have been making her rich. Instead of enjoying her millions, Toni was nickel and dimed to death by record labels. Instead of her family lifting her up, many leaned on her harder, expecting the bank of Toni to always be open. And that right there is where the cracks in the Braxton empire started. Because the truth is, Tamar wasn't lying when she said she helped cover what the others—
Very, very smart. Smart.
Talk at me, Michelle.
Okay, guys, I really do love him. I love him. I do. I love him.
What the others wouldn't. She's admitted flat out. Nobody but me helped take care of my mother. Nobody. Toni was paying for everything. Car insurance, the house, the bills. And when it got too heavy, I stepped in. That's not shade. That's fact. And that fact stings, because it exposes just how one-sided the family loyalty really was. Let's rewind. To really understand the depth of this, you have to go back to the 1990s, when Toni Braxton was unstoppable. Her debut album went diamond. Her second, Secrets, gave us one of the most iconic ballads of all time. She was everywhere: magazine covers, primetime TV, world tours. Fans saw her as untouchable. But behind those magazine covers, behind the smiles, the numbers told another story. Reports said Toni generated more than $170 million for her record label, Arista. But what did she personally pocket from all of that? Practically nothing. Why? Because the contracts were set up to bleed her dry. Every music video, every wardrobe change, every private jet, every studio hour, the label charged it all back to her. By the time the dust settled, Toni claimed she walked away with less than $2,000 in royalties. Imagine that. A global superstar who couldn't even afford to buy her own mother a car without slipping further into debt. That's the part fans never saw. They saw the sold-out concerts. They saw the award shows. But they didn't see the humiliation of a woman who was broke while the world thought she was rich. And in that humiliation, her family didn't stop asking. They didn't stop expecting. They didn't stop leaning. Even Tracy Braxton admitted once that she told Toni, "When you make it, you can help us." And Toni, trying to be everything to everyone, stepped right into that trap. She became the family's unofficial ATM. But even the strongest bank account eventually runs dry. By 1998, it all came crashing down. Toni filed for bankruptcy for the first time, and the headlines were ruthless. How could one of the biggest stars of the decade be broke? Fans called her irresponsible. Critics mocked her spending. But what they didn't know, what only Tamar and those closest to her understood, was that the contracts were robbery, The bills were endless, and the family obligations were crushing. And here's where it gets worse. Filing bankruptcy doesn't just reset your finances. It brands you. It humiliates you publicly. It puts your name in the papers as if you're a failure, when in reality you were being robbed by the very system that made you a star. At one point, creditors even accused Toni of fraud for transferring $53,000 to her then-husband Carrie Lewis, claiming she was hiding money. But as Tamar has always said, her sister wasn't scheming. She was drowning, and through all of this, Tamar never asked to be paid. She sang background vocals for free. She chipped in when their mother's bills piled up. She stood by Toni when others demanded checks. This is why Tamar has been so outspoken in recent years. To her, the bankruptcy filings weren't just about unfair contracts. They were about the family dynamic that let Toni carry the load while others turned away. By the time the second bankruptcy rolled around years later, the toll on Toni wasn't just financial, it was physical. Lupus, microvascular angina, canceled shows, IRS liens. The disease nearly killed her. But what broke her spirit was the knowledge that even in her darkest hour, the pressure to care for everyone else never disappeared. And who was right there again, doing what she could to ease the load? Tamar. So when Tamar Braxton speaks now, when she tells interviewers she feels sorry for her sister, it isn't pity. It's acknowledgement. It's the truth. She knows what Toni endured. She saw the sacrifices up close. And maybe, just maybe, she wants the world to finally stop mocking those bankruptcies and start asking the real question. What kind of system forces a legend to her knees while her family stands by waiting for the next check? But this is where the story takes a sharp turn. Because as much as Tamar has defended her sister, the whispers never stopped. Whispers that maybe Toni's survival instincts pushed her into decisions that weren't about love, but about money. Whispers that asked, did Toni Braxton marry Birdman for survival? And that question, that messy, controversial question, is what sets the stage for the next chapter. Because if you thought bankruptcy was the lowest point, wait until you hear what happened when Birdman entered the picture. By the time Toni Braxton walked into her second bankruptcy, the world had already made up its mind. To the headlines, she was careless with money. To the critics, she was proof that fame didn't guarantee financial wisdom. But to Tamar Braxton, her baby sister, it was something else entirely. To her, this was survival. Because this time, the collapse wasn't just about shady record contracts or greedy labels. It was about sickness, about bills piling up when her body betrayed her. Doctors told Toni she had lupus. They told her about microvascular angina. Both conditions drained her energy, stole her voice on the bad days, and forced her to cancel shows that could have kept her afloat. And here's the cruel twist. When she canceled her Las Vegas residency, the insurance companies refused to cover her. That meant every dime she had poured into rehearsals, costumes, dancers, lights, travel, hotel rooms, and production was suddenly her responsibility. Overnight, the concerts vanished. But the bills didn't. She had to pay everyone, the musicians, the stage crew, the managers, even though she wasn't earning a single cent back. Imagine the humiliation of explaining to the world that your body simply couldn't go on, while also explaining to creditors why you couldn't meet their deadlines. It wasn't just exhausting, it was devastating. And that devastation only grew when the IRS came knocking in 2019. They slapped a lien on Toni for more than $340,000 in back taxes, and the state of California piled on another $116,000, nearly $500,000 in unpaid taxes. For the second time in her career, she was branded as broke. Now here's where the whispers started to grow louder. Because while the public was quick to laugh, to call her irresponsible again, Tamar and those close to her knew the deeper truth. Toni had spent decades carrying not only herself, but everyone else. She carried her sisters, she carried their mother, she carried their entire lifestyle. And by the time her own body gave up, she had nothing left. Enter Birdman. To outsiders, the idea of Toni Braxton and Birdman together sounded like an odd pairing. She was the elegant R&B queen, all class and ballads, while he was the tattooed hip-hop mogul with a reputation for street business. But to those who knew, this wasn't random. Birdman had been around for nearly 2 decades as her friend, her supporter, the man who showed up at baby showers, at plays, at concerts. Whenever Toni collapsed, whenever lupus threatened to take her down, he was there. For the first time in years, Toni wasn't the caretaker. She wasn't the one paying the bills, putting food on the table, pretending to be strong when she was falling apart inside. With Birdman, she could breathe. She could take off the wig, pull on a baseball cap, and still feel like someone wanted her. He asked her every day, "Are you good? Are you okay?" And when she tried to fake it, he called her out. That kind of care, after decades of carrying everyone else, felt like love. So when Birdman went public, calling her his soldier, his life, his everything, and gifting her a luxury Bentley truck, the world rolled its eyes, but Toni glowed. Rolled its eyes, but Toni glowed. She posted pictures, she flaunted the diamond engagement ring, and she started talking about a wedding she wanted styled like the Great Gatsby, elegant and timeless. To her fans, it looked like a fairy tale. To Tamar, it looked like the first time her sister wasn't walking alone. But nothing in the Braxton family is ever simple. The wedding kept being postponed. First, it was filming schedules. Then it was family drama. Toni even admitted she thought the wedding might heal the rifts between her sisters. But instead, it did the opposite. It became another source of tension. Then came the story that made fans raise their eyebrows: the stolen engagement ring. $1 million ring left in checked luggage mysteriously disappearing. Some fans thought it was real. Others whispered it was a cover-up, that maybe the ring had been sold to cover debts, or that the drama was staged for the show. Whatever the truth was, the optics weren't good, and then, almost suddenly, the cracks widened. Birdman deleted every photo of Toni from his Instagram and posted the cryptic words, "It's over." Toni, meanwhile, uploaded a photo in a stunning red gown with the caption, "Starting a new chapter isn't always an easy choice, but always choose to be chosen." Fans read that as a goodbye, as closure. But just when the world thought the love story was finished, court documents dropped a bombshell. On August 8, 2024, Toni Braxton and Birdman quietly married. No big ceremony, no Gatsby theme, just a secret legal union. And 2 days later, on August 10th, they separated. 2 days. By August 22nd, Toni filed for divorce, calling the marriage irretrievably broken. Pause for a second. Marrying someone you've known for 15 years, someone who's been your best friend, only to walk away 2 days later? Does that sound like romance? Or does that sound like survival? That's where the whispers shifted into full-blown suspicion. Fans started to question whether Toni had tied herself to Birdman not for love, but for stability. After years of bankruptcies, IRS debts, canceled shows, and endless family obligations, was this marriage really about companionship? Or was it a transaction? Tamar, careful as always, never accused her sister outright. But she didn't need to. Her words about feeling sorry for Toni, about recognizing how the financial burden had drained her for decades, painted the picture clearly enough. She defended her sister's dignity, but she also let the world know that the choices Toni made were choices no one else in the family ever had to face. And then came the twist nobody expected. In January 2025, just months after filing for divorce, Toni dismissed the petition. Birdman agreed, which means that on paper, legally, the two of them may still be husband and wife. Confusing? Absolutely. Suspicious? Without a doubt. Fans don't know whether to believe in a rekindled love or to see it as a business move that never fully dissolved. But either way, the question won't go away. Did Toni Braxton marry Birdman for love, or did she do it to survive? And here's where Tamar becomes the center of it all again. Because her voice, her revelations, her subtle comments are the reason fans even connect the dots. She has been the one to remind the world of the sacrifices, the one to remind them of the nights when Toni was working herself sick while still covering her mother's bills. She has been the one to tell the truth, that while the world called her sister reckless, she was really just carrying too much. To outsiders, the love story between Toni and Birdman was messy, dramatic, and confusing. But to those who know the Braxton story, it was simply another chapter in a lifetime of sacrifice. A woman who gave the world her voice and got crumbs in return. A woman who was blamed for being broke when in reality, she had been robbed twice. Once by the industry, and once by the expectations of her own blood. And the saddest part? Even now, the whispers don't stop. Fans speculate about the ring, about the secret marriage, about the sudden split, and the dismissed divorce. They connect it to the bankruptcies, the liens, the canceled tours. They say it looks calculated. They say it looks like strategy. But the truth? Only Toni and Birdman know for sure. Still, one thing remains undeniable. Tamar is right. Her sister carried a weight no one else would, and no matter how the world tries to twist the story, that fact will never change. The story of Toni Braxton and the shadows that have followed her career has never been a simple one. And by the time whispers of her 2-day marriage to Birdman reached the public, fans were split between disbelief and sympathy. To some, it was a sad love story gone wrong. To others, it was evidence that decades of financial pain and family obligation had finally pushed her into choices that blurred the line between romance and survival. But to Tamar Braxton, it was yet another reminder that her sister's life has never been as glamorous as it looked under the stage lights. Because while the world debated whether the union was about money or love, Tamar couldn't forget the years she watched her sister hold everyone else up. She couldn't forget the endless bills, the car insurance payments, the background vocals she sang without charging a cent, while her other siblings still demanded salaries. She couldn't forget the way lupus drained Toni of her strength, or the way canceled shows left her scrambling to pay entire crews out of pocket. And she certainly couldn't forget the humiliation of not one but 2 bankruptcies that turned her sister's pain into tabloid punchlines. For Tamar, the marriage to Birdman wasn't about optics. It was about survival instincts. The mystery only grew deeper when Toni dismissed the divorce petition. Months earlier, she had declared the marriage irretrievably broken. Now she was reversing it. To fans, it didn't make sense. Was she still legally tied to Birdman? Were they secretly working things out? Or was this simply a technical move to protect assets and avoid another wave of public humiliation? Nobody knew. What they did know was that this kind of chaos seemed to follow Toni everywhere, and that, in part, was because the weight she carried never truly left her shoulders. When you look at the timeline, the story almost tells itself. 2 massive bankruptcies, millions lost to contracts that exploited her, IRS liens that dragged her through the mud, health battles that nearly killed her, forcing her to cancel residencies that should have cemented her financial security, a $1 million engagement ring that conveniently vanished from checked luggage, and then a marriage that lasted 2 days before being undone in silence. Each chapter looks less like coincidence and more like survival strategy. And that is why fans continue to ask the same question. Did Toni Braxton marry for love, or did she marry for relief? But here's where things get even more complicated. Because while fans debated, Tamar's voice grew louder. Not in accusations, but in subtle truths. She never said, "My sister married for money." But she did say, "I feel sorry for her." She did say, "Nobody helped but me." She did say, "She carried all of us." And those words hit harder than gossip. They weren't rumors. They were memories. They were facts told by the one sibling who was in the trenches with her. And that is why fans believe Tamar more than anyone else in this story. For years, people saw Toni as the glamorous R&B icon. Flawless gowns, perfectly styled hair, a voice that could move mountains. But the truth was, behind closed doors, she was exhausted. She was sick. She was broke. And she was still expected to be the glue that held the Braxton family together. That contradiction is what broke her spirit, and it's why Tamar has refused to stay silent. She knows that the world will keep mocking the bankruptcies, keep questioning the marriage, keep speculating about the stolen ring. But unless someone speaks up, no one will understand what Toni really endured, and that's the heartbreak of this story. Because no matter what choice Toni made, to file bankruptcy, to marry Birdman, to dismiss the divorce, she was judged. When she tried to carry the family, she was drained. When she tried to find love, it was mocked. When she leaned on someone else, people whispered it was calculation. For Toni, there was no winning. And for Tamar, watching her sister suffer under that microscope has been its own kind of torment. So where does that leave us? With a mystery that may never be solved? Maybe Toni truly did love Birdman, and the 2-day split was nothing more than the chaos of fame, health, and family pressure colliding at the wrong time. Maybe it was a financial arrangement that went sideways. Maybe it was both. The truth may be forever locked between them. But what cannot be denied is this. Tamar Braxton has changed the way people see the story. Her revelations have forced fans to look past the headlines and see the human cost. Because in the end, this isn't just a tale of bankruptcies and breakups. It's the story of a woman who gave everything she had, her money, her health, her peace of mind, to her family and her career, only to be left with scars that no amount of Grammys could heal. It's the story of a sister who couldn't watch in silence anymore, who finally told the truth about what survival really looked like in the Braxton household. And it's the story of a marriage that, whether real or calculated, became the symbol of just how heavy the price of fame can be. So when people ask whether Toni Braxton married Birdman for love or money, maybe the better question is this: how many choices does a woman really have when survival is the only option? Because love fades, money disappears, contracts run out, but survival, that never goes away. And in the world of the Braxtons, survival has always come at a cost.